What's going on, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. And today, folks, we are looking at Daredevil issue number 15. This issue came out in April of 1965, and today, folks, we see the return of Ox. He was a former member of the Enforcers as well as the Fellowship of Fear. And so Daredevil has a fight on his hands as he's fighting the big, powerful Ox here, probably the strongest villain that Daredevil has gone up against so far in this series so far in Volume 1. And so let's go ahead and get started. Today's title is And Men Shall Call Him Ox. And today's issue is brought to you by Stan Lee, who wrote this issue. We have John Romita on the penciling, Frankie Ray on the inking, and the lettering page by Artie Simek. So let's go ahead now and look at this issue. We see that Daredevil has returned back to New York after being away from New York for a time. We saw that he had quit, but now he is now back in New York, working with Foggy Nelson and Karen Page. This is where he belongs. This is where Daredevil gets to thrive, and we're going to just see that Daredevil is just so happy to be back. And we see that he's going to return back to his office just in time for Foggy and Karen Page to make it. And we see that Daredevil, part of what is a part of Matt Murdock's power is that he has the ability to hear things like footsteps and anything, and he knows that the footsteps belong to certain people, so he knows that these footsteps belong to Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, but these footsteps seem irregular, and the reason for that is Foggy Nelson is not feeling well. And we just so happen to see that Foggy Nelson is dealing with dizziness, probably a concussion, and that concussion has been with him for a few months because of what happened to him in issue number 6. Well, in issue number 6 with the Fellowship of Fear, we saw that Ox hit Foggy Nelson, and Foggy has been feeling the ramifications of that punch or slap to the head from Ox ever since. So Matt Murdock is going to call the doctor to get some information about how can Foggy Nelson recover. Now, just so happens we're going to see that Ox is with this one person in prison. It's in state prison. This is Dr. Slag. He makes his first appearance in this issue, and Dr. Slag has been telling Ox and promising him that if they can break out of prison, then he's going to take him back to Mr. Fear's laboratory and help him to become smarter. And so we see that all the commotion that's been going on alerts the security, and security says, "This is your last warning, Ox. Act up again, and it'll be solitary for you." And so Dr. Slag is like, you cannot do, you got to lay low. You cannot make so much commotion, Ox. And Ox he's super powerful, but not so bright. And so what we see here is that Dr. Slag says, you keep working on those iron bars, weaken them even more, and we'll break out of here. And I promise you, when I bring you back to the lab, you will become smarter. And so now we get some information on Foggy Nelson's health here. All that Foggy Nelson needs is to stay at home for a while and get some rest, and he'll be fit as a fiddle. And so we see here that Karen Page is going to take Foggy Nelson back home while Matt Murdock stays behind. And she's like, "Oh, Matt, if only you'd give me some sign that you care, something for my heart to cling to." But Matt Murdock has more pressing issues, and that is to catch up on his work here. And while that is taking place, we see that Ox was able to weaken those iron bars as good enough as he could to break out of prison. He takes down these security guards with no problem at all, while Dr. Slag is going to shoot and blast through the locks with a gun, and they escape the state prison. So while Matt Murdock is back home training in his basement here, he hears a bulletin about how Ox and Dr. Carl Strag has broken out of prison. So he suits up as Daredevil, and now Daredevil is going to be on the prowl looking for Ox. And he doesn't know anything about Dr. Strag, but we see that Dr. Strag is going to take Ox to that laboratory as he promised, and Ox at first is a little suspicious here, but Dr. Strag is going to tell him, trust me, you're going to be my partner. We're going to work together. And so they go into these machines, they put the headsets on, he clicks this button, and the process takes place, but it's not like what we think is going to happen. And so what we're going to see instead is that Dr. Strag's entire personality and mind goes into the body of the Ox, while Ox's personality goes into the body of Dr. Strag. And so now really Dr. Strag is the Ox. So Dr. Strag tricked the Ox into going through this process, and so now Dr. Strag is in control of Ox's power here, his strength, while Ox is in the body of Dr. Strag, who is a weakling. And so now, with Dr. Strag having the mind and brilliance of him, as well as the strength of Ox, he is now unstoppable. And Daredevil is now going to be coming up against a different kind of Ox here. And so that's what we're going to see as we continue to look through these panels here, is that once Daredevil comes across Ox, it's going to be a very different Ox. And so what we're going to see is that Karen Page is walking down the street and she's going towards her apartment, but this is exactly where the Ox is at. And so Daredevil saves her at the nick of time here by falling right into the Ox here. But as Daredevil begins to fight the Ox, he notices that he speaks differently. He has a different personality. And he's like, this is different. Usually Ox is a slow speaker. He it has super strength, of course, but this does not sound like the Ox. Who is this, and how has he changed over the months? Well, while all this is taking place, we see that the new Ox takes the part of this, looks like a pole of some kind, and hits Daredevil right in the stomach. And this is going to knock out Daredevil. And so what's the new Ox is going to do is he's going to take a spare change of his clothes and puts it on Daredevil to make Daredevil look like he was responsible for all the damage. And then this new Ox, because he knows that this woman, Karen Page, knows the identity or something about the original Ox, is going to take her hostage. And so she has no choice but to follow him as he has his grip on her. And so the police arrive on the scene and they notice that Daredevil is dressed up as Ox and they're going to take him into custody. They think that he's responsible, but they're still not going to think that he was really responsible. They're going to really check into things. So when Daredevil regains consciousness here, he notices that he is in prison. And he says, I want a lawyer now. So back at that laboratory, we see that the new Ox comes back and he says, you dim-witted clod, why are you still here? And that original Dr. Strag, who has Ox's brain now, says, I didn't know where to go, what to do. I still can't believe what happened. And so Karen Page is like, what is going on? Am I going mad? His voice, it's the way I remember the Ox talking. And so we see that with Ox's brain, with Dr. Strag, he then is going to hit the new Ox with this some sort of instrument of some kind. Down goes the new Ox. Ox gets back to his feet. Karen Page and Dr. Strag are going to then run to safety here while the police show up. The new Ox then, just takes this car and flips it upside down. I mean, that's the strength of Ox here. Daredevil is let go out of prison here, and Daredevil learns that There's a young woman, Karen Page, has been taken hostage by Ox, and Daredevil's going to race to the scene to get there on time. And this is where we're going to see the final battle scene between Daredevil and the Ox here. And Daredevil's like, I liked you better when you were you. And said, I don't know what happened to you, Ox, and how you got a new personality, but I'm going to do what I can to defeat you. And so what we see is that Ox loses his footsteps and he plummets and falls off of this building here. And we don't know exactly what happens, if he died or not, but we do know that Dr. Strag, who now has Ox's brain, which is basically the Ox, really, he notices the entire scene. He feels like a new person. And so what he's going to do, I'm going to take advantage of this new body, and I'm going to make some changes in my life. So we see that Matt Murdock returns back to his office. He notices that Foggy Nelson is back early here. And so what exactly is going on? Well, Foggy Nelson was the one that helped Daredevil get out of prison. And so what we see here is that Dr. Strag, who is now the Ox, is going to return back to prison, but he's going to say that I'll try to be worthy of this miracle. So that's how we end this issue. Next issue, we have a big surprise coming, a big guest star. Spider-Man is coming and making his first debut in this series here. So that's so awesome. We're going to see Daredevil and Spider-Man together in the same comic. That's going to be awesome. So look forward to covering issue number 16 with y'all. But before we look at that, go ahead and give this video a like. Comment down below what you liked about this issue. Subscribe if you have not. And I will see y'all in the next one.